Welcome to this week's roundup of news and polls from Ipsos MORI. And this week we've seen economic confidence head south. 7 out of 10 of us say that they expect the economic condition of the country to get worse over the next year. And of course, the figures from the Office of National Statistics about the state of the economy showed one of the sharpest falls on record, minus 20% during April. So the public probably aren't wrong in terms of their pessimism. We're also becoming more critical of the government now. Only 40% of us now say that the government's handled the virus outbreak well. And that is starting to sort of play through into general political attitudes. Overall, in terms of who's doing a good job and a bad job in responding to the virus, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, who is also, of course, employing many millions of people through the job retention scheme, has the highest rating. 6 out of 10 think he's doing a good job, along with the leading doctor overseeing the response, Chris Whitty. 6 out of 10 people also say that he's doing a good job. Boris Johnson's scores are much more divided. They haven't really changed since March, but about 45% positive and 42% negative. And the government generally is seeing its scores slip back. Having said that, it still remains much more positively regarded as a government in terms of what it's doing on this than many other governments in other periods in the past. Because remember, most people in Britain are negative about our government, whoever they are. So the fact that it's 40% positive, 44% negative actually isn't that bad for a government. So some criticism. The man handing out the money is most popular, but the government's ratings are falling back a bit. And overall, Labour has seen a surge in the polls. They're now 5 points behind the Conservatives. Conservatives have dropped down below 50%. To 43%. The results are sort of getting back to, the Conservative share of the vote is now back to somewhere similar to where it was at the general election. Labour, of course, has improved its position. So with a 5 points difference between the parties, you might say it's all to play for. But what I would point you to is the fact that during the 2010 to 2015 Parliament, Labour was regularly 12 points ahead of the Conservatives in the polls and didn't go on to win in 2015. So it's much too soon to read anything into these numbers. But it is true to say that Keir Starmer is having a reasonably good start as leader of the opposition. His net satisfaction score is now similar to that of Tony Blair in the early 1990s. And, if you compare his plus 31 net satisfaction score to the highest score ever achieved by Jeremy Corbyn, which was -1, it just shows that he's certainly making a much more positive impression. Again, having said that, he's still 5 percentage points behind Boris Johnson when the public are asked to make a simple choice between which man would make the best Prime Minister. So certainly not a slam dunk for Labour, but the Conservatives will be worried about the general direction of travel. And overall, the public remains very concerned about the virus. It's fallen from 78% to 66%, but 66% of us, 2 in 3, think that it poses a big threat to our health. And our work with King's College London suggests that we are tending to overestimate the danger the virus poses. The public typically overestimate by a factor of 10 their likelihood of being hospitalised if they catch it. And that may explain why many of us are still worried about the speed at which lockdown is occurring. It's also true, of course, that there have been massive changes in our behaviour during lockdown. And one thing that we've looked at is whether those habits and changes might stick after the end of the lockdown. And what it looks likely is that our use of technology, our spending time online and working from home are all going to be likely to stay at the sort of level that has stuck during the epidemic. So we've seen a massive digital acceleration, and much of that, things like home shopping, people are expecting to do much more of that in the year ahead rather than less. In fact, the only things that where we clearly expect to do less in future are using our cars and, sadly for all of us, I think, going abroad on holidays. But that digital acceleration in the growth of online shopping and services, online banking, that all looks likely to stick, as well as home working. More than 3 out of 10 of us are expecting to work at home more in future. And with social distancing in workplaces making it difficult to fill them with people as in the past, that looks pretty likely. We might also see our cities become less attractive places both to live in and work in. About 4 out of 10 of us say that we're less likely to want to either live or work in a city in future, or feel that they'll become less attractive places to be. And if you are thinking about young people killing themselves to pay rent or a mortgage to live in a big city, when actually they're now going to be more likely to want to work at home and just perhaps go into an office once or twice a week, why wouldn't they live somewhere cheaper, further out, with more space, and then they can just commute in occasionally? So maybe we'll see a big shift in that. Let's wait and see. We've also seen people expecting that the virus itself is going to lead to a fall in housing prices, which many people will be pleased about, particularly young people. Homeowners, of course, less keen. And generally, a fall in house prices might not necessarily mean that we're seeing GDP recovering very quickly. So we'll have to see what the long-term effects of the virus are. If you're interested in people's financial circumstances and how they're responding to both to going on furlough, to lockdown and spending less money, because certainly consumer spending has fallen very markedly, do come to our seminar on the 23rd of June at 3:30, where we'll look at detailed data that we track on a monthly basis for Britain's banks. All of our data about COVID-19 and how people are responding to it, both in Britain and around the world, is available here. So do click on this link and bookmark this page. And that's all for this week. We'll keep watching, listening and learning, and we'll report back to you regularly. Thank you.